G'day everybody, welcome to Pub Yarns. I'm running solo today. KLP is missing as we're on two different shifts, so let's get into it. So the first part is we've got three teams that have not lost a game, and we've got three teams that have not won a game. Those teams who haven't won a game is the Titans, St George and Manly, but Manly's got 2 points because they've had the bye. This week St George and the Titans play each other, so one of those two teams are going to be on 0 points. Also this week we've got the ladder updates. There's been some movement on our ladder. Dan the Man has actually dropped down and Brad's taken the lead, so look out for that later on. So week 3 recap, the Raiders and the Dogs. Mate, those Raiders must be just kicking themselves. Both teams looked a little bit flat in the first half, but the Dogs seemed to have got a hold of it in the second and ended up coming away with the winners. So that was the Dogs by 14 over the Raiders 10. Next up was the Roosters versus the Panthers. The Roosters jumped out there pretty quick in the first little bit, but then again the Panthers just became too clinical again and put on 40 unanswered points. With this going on the way the Panthers are going, I think the Panthers are going to be a real threat to the top 4. Both sides looked a little bit flat in that first half. Storm did jump out 14-0 at half time. The Broncos didn't panic and they showed why they were premiers last year, and they've come away with a nice little win. That was the first win the Broncos have had in Melbourne in the last 10 years. So I reckon the Broncos have turned the corner and we could see a Panthers-like recovery and Broncos to start playing well. Knights versus the Warriors, and with the Knights with $2.7 million in the shed, and the Warriors also showing up in great form. If the Warriors are going to win a comp, it's this year. So hopefully the Warriors can keep going with their antics, if you will, and get it away with it. They beat the Knights 38-12. The Sharks versus the Dolphins, and the Dolphins just ran away with that game. The Sharks just really didn't have an answer for the fast and furious pace of what the Dolphins threw down. And I think the Sharks might be done this year. They are not performing very well. The Dolphins are 50-50 and anything can happen. South versus the Tigers, that was another good game. Nice and tight, it was 20-16 for the Rabbits. The Rabbits seem to be performing quite well at the moment. Latrell's playing good footy. So look out for the Rabbits. Eels versus the Dragons, that was a bit of a seesaw sort of a game. Guffo played really well for St George, which I didn't expect he wouldn't. Mitch Moses' boot was working pretty good, and after a seesaw sort of a game that looked like the Dragons were going to make a comeback, but old Bud spilt that ball just before full time. The Fox picked it up and ran the length of the field, showing that the Fox has still got a fair bit of pace in him. Finally, the Cows have got on the scoreboard. The Cows were playing the Titans and someone had to lose because they were both at the bottom of the ladder, and this time Drinkwater and Co got away with the money. So it was good from the Cows finally getting on the board. Unfortunately, the Titans have got to wait another day. Anyhow, we see how we go this week. The Titans up against the Saints. For my money, the Titans will be fighting Manly for the spoon. And as for the Raiders and the Sharks, I think their season's going to be pretty well done and dusted. I picked those both teams at 10-11 respectively. Now we're in for round 4. Who we've got playing up first? We've got Manly and the Roosters. Both these teams need a win and they need it desperately. Manly for me is just not strong enough, and I don't know what's happened with the Roosters because they are a far better team on paper. I suspect that the Roosters will come away with this one, and I'm picking the Roosters by 12. So look out for that one. Next game up is the Warriors versus the Tigers, and like I said, this year is the year of the Warrior, so I would not like to be the Tigers. I think the Warriors at home are going to be far too strong, and I think the Warriors will win by 16. Alright, next up we've got the Queensland Derby. We've got the Broncos versus the Finns, and last week both teams had a win, but the Broncos was a bigger win because they played Melbourne, and I think Broncos have turned the corner, so I'll be taking the Broncos, and I think the Broncos might get the Thins by about 8. So look out for that game here at Suncorp Stadium. Next up, we got the Dogs versus the Knights, and who's at home? The Dogs are at home, so mate, the Knights have just lost 2 big players, Dylan Brown and Ponga, and without those 2 guys on the paddock, they're going to struggle. So I'm going to have the Dogs by plenty. Dogs by 20. The Eels versus the Panthers. The Eels do have the Panthers number every now and again. The Eels did beat St George last week, which is nobody. But on the other hand, the Panthers are running very clinical at this moment. I'd love to back the Eels, but I just can't this week because the Panthers are just running too hot. I dare say it'll be the Panthers by 16. What have we got next? We've got the Cows versus the Storm. I think the Storm will be pretty cranky after last week, and I think the Cows might be their scapegoat. Fortunately for the Cows, they're up there in Townsville, and Storm's all the way down in Melbourne, so the weather might have something to do with it, but nah. Melbourne to win, and win plenty. Melbourne by 30. Raiders versus the Sharks. What can I say? Both these teams are underperforming. Who's going to win this game? Who's the hungrier? I think Ricky would have been bashing those guys last week at training, so I'm just going to take the Raiders by 4, because that's where it's at. And now it's the game of the round. Titans versus the Dragons. Who's going to get the wooden spoon this year? Titans, Dragons, Manly. One of those 3s are going to be it. I've got my money on Manly. But anyhow, back to the game. Titans played a fair game there last week, but Guffo from St George also played very well. I thought St George played probably a little bit better than what the Titans did against their opponents. So this week I'm taking the Dragons, not by much, maybe Dragons by 10. So round 4 recap, I've got Manly versus the Roosters, Roosters by 12. The Wars versus the Tigers, I'm taking the Wars by 16. Broncos versus the Finns, I've got the Broncos for 8. Then I've got the Dogs and the Knights. Knights no good, Dogs by 20. Then I'm coming up with the Eels versus the informed Panthers, Panthers by 16. I've got the Cows versus the Storm, and Storm, the cranky Storm's going to be Storm by 30. Then I've got Raiders versus the Sharks, Raiders by 4. And the Spoon Bowl is the Titans and the Dragons, and I'll take the Dragons by 10. Ladder time. Dan has jumped out of the circle, and it looks like Brad and Lachlan had their full alert training in session there last week. Both of them got 7, and that leapfrogged Dan into first place for Brad, and Lachlan snuck into top 3 contention. Both guys are going very well. They've only missed out 8 from 8 by 1. So keep an eye on the ladder and we'll see where that goes. And on the back of that, Marie looks like she's also jumped out of the circle, and she's only got 1 this week, and she was going pretty good up until just now. But maybe she shouldn't be back in the Titans so much. But anyhow, we'll see how the rest of the season go. We've only done 3 rounds, and there's a long way to go between here and knock-off time. So that's it at the moment. We've rounded it out, and it's goodbye from Pressy 007 and KLP Missing in Action.